Well, hello, everybody. Larry Young here again with another segment of Ola Man Living Life with Purity. And today I've got Alex Fiato back in the studio with me. And I wanted to follow up with Alex here with a little bit of a Q&A, going over his recent segment he did there on George Washington's visit by Our Lady back during the days of Valley Forge, and the implications of what that has for designs on this country going forward, and how that may relate to the previous segment I did on Pietas and the differences and revolutions between the U.S. side of things, the Jeffersonian model, and then there was then the French method of revolution with lots of decapitations and mayhem going on, the Robespierre version, the Reign of Terror. So there was a lot of differences in there, and a lot of things that Alex was able to bring out in his recent instructional, educational video there. And I put it out there as one long segment there that you could come in and use as a reference piece going forward. So wherever it is in that hour and 20-some minutes of timeline on there, you'll be able to find what it is you may want to go back in and punch out and pull out or clip out to add and share with your friends and followers as well. So feel free to do that. You can always clip these segments and reuse them as is, as long as you don't change them in their nature. So that's always part of our arrangements here with YouTube. But Alex, I want to thank you for there was a lot of hard work that went into that, and I know, because I know what it is for me to just do a simple little segment.
Yeah, did
but
very
I
nice.
want to thank you for that, and I hope people
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. But I've got a question I want to ask you.
Sure.
Why the Blessed Mother, and why George Washington?
Very interesting, because Washington asked her several times. He called her, quote, singularly beautiful female, but she would not answer him as to who she was. Now, there's a mystery in that, and I'll give you my take on it. I think a lot of these people in the Revolution were mainly Protestant in terms of background, and I don't think that Our Lady wanted to, bring in the idea that my son sent me to talk to you. That she was more interested, and Jesus was more interested in the formation of this country without getting into some kind of a theological distraction. Well, I'm the mother of Jesus, you know what I mean? They were interested in what you were talking about in the revolution being centered on God and the individual as opposed to the revolution.
So this was a juxtaposition as to what was going on with the French model, which took a Catholic country and tried to disavow it, and what happened with all the bloodshed.
Well, you betcha,
and when
because
they
they were
took
Catholic.
God out of the equation, out of the arguments,
Sure.
it all became about man. She wanted to make sure that didn't happen here, because the U.S. Revolution was following on the heels of the French Revolution.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So the motivation was that these framers of the Declaration, the Constitution, their motive was real, and that mankind has to be under God. Well, of course, the French should have known this, because France was a great nation. They called it one of the greatest nations to present Christ and Our Lady to the world. But here it is, a revolution, and you described it as being a horrifying.
Well, it's the elitists decided that they knew better than the common man,
There you
because
go.
the common man was too dumb to figure out left
Yeah.
from right.
Right.
Type of stuff. So they imparted their demands for wisdom their way upon the common people. Kind of like what we got going on today, don't we?
Well,
very similar.
that's frightening. I think you made the point, too, that how are we going to get out of this thing? And then, of course, you said, Our Lady says, we have to be grounded feather strokes, and we have to be respectful to God and to our neighbor, and we can debate it, but we can't club each other.
Right. You have to make sure we have that all put together there. So, I think she was very definite in that, with feather strokes being the way and not hammer blows, because the battles are going to be there, whichever way it happens, I believe. But
The battles are
But
going
what
to
you
be
have to do is you have to have that groundwork, and maybe that's what Our Lady was looking for, was to instill in George Washington and his fellows Protestants, though they may have been.
Absolutely.
But they were very, very strong. Like I said, when I was, talking about that with you, I said I think they're a very strong, God-fearing people. The only thing that they were lacking was the presence of the Eucharist in their lives.
And that didn't seem to be an impediment for Christ to send his mother to engage with this group of people that were designing a new nation.
So that was more about foundational elements and underpinnings, because you can't build a solid structure on a loose foundation.
Absolutely.
Okay,
They were heading towards the Eucharist, whether they knew it or not. I mean, because Our Lady was confirming to them that Jesus likes exactly what they're doing. And he didn't like what was going on in France because they took God out of the equation.
Right. But
the
people,
mother of God being a human being.
And this is probably one of the reasons that Mary didn't enter into profile in the church more so until the Middle Ages, because
Correct.
had they promoted her earlier on, they would have deified her.
That's correct.
And then she'd have been totally unapproachable.
Absolutely.
So the humanization of Mary,
Right.
takes place here, I think, pretty much after the Council on Trent in the 1500s. Then Mary starts being focused on more with the concepts of talking about her being immaculately conceived, and so the Immaculate Conception. I don't know exactly when that first concept was talked about, but I think a lot of things happened around that period of the growth of the church, and when they opened the seminaries finally, we actually had formal training of priests and other.
So getting your
clergy.
buddy to be a priest and go out there and collect money. You said
Well-
they were just it was a
Well, it
shoot
was
from the hip.
Well, to be a priest back in
ordination.
those days, you just went to work with another guy who was a priest, but there wasn't any formal training for these guys. And so what the Council of Trent did is it ended up formalizing the beginning of actual seminaries, and they would have these formators in there that would help to build the priests and make them in a uniform method going out, which made the state governments, the kings and the larger governments much more happy, because now there was some sort of stability that was going on. It wasn't this guy's a priest over here, but who formed him? Well, he was formed. This old guy over there was a priest. And
He was at a bar and they thought he was a good guy. They decided.
yeah,
to
well,
let him in.
there wasn't a whole lot of networking. They didn't have LinkedIn back then. No Facebook.
Speaking of Washington, I would like to read what Torellius said when he was first released in 86, 87.
From Reagan's pressure.
That's absolutely right. In other words, President Reagan was told by probably a guy by the name of Skubik that there's a fella in jail named Joseph Torellia, and if Gorbachev means what he says, get him to release this guy. They really didn't want to release.
No,
Torellia.
they didn't want Joseph on this side.
He was a problem. But anyway, Joseph says this: October the 22nd, 1987. He said, "I appeared in Washington D.C. before the Congressional Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. In attendance were luminaries such as Senator Alphonse D'Amato of New York, Senator Frank Ludinger of New Jersey, and Rochester Congresswoman Louis Slater." He said, "There I was in the nation of the magnificent Statue of Liberty. I believe America has many spiritual problems, but she's like the statue. She's the beacon of freedom. A militarily strong United States is essential to all the world. There is no telling what could have happened had America not been there to counter the spread of communism. In a captivated world and subjugated world, we know that the United States bears the torch of freedom. I said under questioning, I said, this is a country which built its state based on the Bible, and therefore it is very important how the government of the United States relates to its atheistic governments and external affairs." And he says, "I emphasize that the USSR is the first state in the world which openly stated its hatred of God." So here we go. The angel of America, Torellia, is saying this nation is extremely important. And when he was in the Gulag, they looked at this nation as the beacon of hope.
And the man is coming and speaking for congressional leaders and all like that. And this is his message.
Yeah. Blows me away.
He's not saying about, break down communism or anything like that. He's talking about enforce God. Understand what you've got. Understand where you are. Appreciate where you are and what this is. And these people had let it all go away because they had becoming these elites.
Yeah.
And they were starting to practice this elitism
Welcome to
and
France
things like this. And these are the things that Fulton Sheen was talking about
in 1945.
in 47 when the last time I was
After the
talking
war.
about my.
We had no idea, did we, that these things were surrounding us. Huh?
Well, I think the society was kind of drunk on,
Victory?
and this lacks, this opportunity that they had for growth and the ability for consumerism. We had stuff.
No, do you remember the transistor radios they used to sell at W.T. Grant's? I mean,
You put a plug in it. So
Yeah,
you
put it in your ear and you could smell them
games during school.
transistors.
Oh, you smell it kind of cooking. You could smell that hot. Well, we all had a little transistor radio so we could listen to the World Series.
Sure, that's right.
In school.
Right, that's right.
And some of the sisters were pretty generous about that. They said, "Okay, Larry,
You can listen to
you can listen to it, but make sure you're doing your work and don't bother any of the other kids." But they knew I was so into baseball. And I was always getting my work done anyway.
Right,
So I would just go ahead. They had me tutoring other kids all the time.
right.
I was telling my mom about that the other day. She says, what was your seventh grade like in grade school? I said, I spent a lot of my seventh grade running around doing slideshows for all the other classes and stuff like that. And I would help to tutor other kids in the lower grades. I mean, I'd have 5 or 6 kids I'd be teaching about basic arithmetic skills.
Wow.
We weren't even getting into math. But I would teach them how to do things and give them a little exercise so when they go home. I'd say, okay, now I want you to go home tonight. I want you to set the table for all the family, and I want you to count all the number of forks, knives, and spoons and stuff like that you put out. Just give a little
Basic
exercise.
stuff.
But they had to learn to count and understand that these numbers had a relationship. And it was easier, I think, for a lot of these kids to learn if they're learning from another kid and not a nun or somebody who was maybe a little bit intimidating.
Sure.
For these kids, so
absolutely
they used me in that.
They get
My
nervous.
mom says, "Well, how many classes did you go to?" I said, "Well, I went to the classes, but then they'd need somebody, and they'd always say, well, let's go get Larry.'
right. He'll do it.
They just told me what to do, and it got me out of class, but I had all this homework to make up for. But they didn't figure I was such. There were a couple other people that did it too, and Sheila Rustler, she got sent around. She was a fast student.
Sheila was good. She was good at it.
Oh, Sheila was really whip smart. She was one of the smartest kids always in class, and Mike Stronzek and guys from my age. I mean, Mike's an orthodontist now in Fort Wayne. He's one of the top. He's probably getting ready to retire. But yeah, but what every one of those people had was they had drive and ambition when they got out of school. Their education didn't stop with their certificate of graduation.
Yeah.
It was just the start. All an education does is it teaches you how to learn, and you have to keep learning. And that's the model. A lot of people give up learning. They say, well, that's not what I learned in school. Well, it's what changed 20 years ago.
Sure.
Technology came along. We got these things called computers. You might try using one. Anyway, but the Joseph thing, I was kind of stunned when you didn't have it in the original learning pack that you put out there. But I know it's a total oversight, but it's very consequential.
It's actually in there, but it's kind of like a black and white, and it doesn't really translate in terms of.
Well, but I think it's good. I think it's great we centered back on this here. But with Mary and the Blessed Mother and George Washington, and at that stage, and we had talked earlier about the settlement of the country and the invasion of the country, the settlers coming through, and how they came through from the harbor there in Baltimore, came through with that, and then they ended up working their way down the Ohio River, using the rivers as their highways
Correct.
to get in. But they always brought the Immaculate Conception.
Yeah, very key. That's a very key.
They didn't bring
feature.
Jesus.
Well,
Because
because
with the Immaculate Conception, you get Jesus.
That's right. It's a package deal.
What's that old Chinese thing? With number 5, you get egg roll or something
Yeah,
like
you get
that.
an egg roll with it. Then, so.
But that's how it was. So they knew the value, these explorers did, in bringing the Blessed Mother along under that particular title.
Absolutely, she's the family. She's the core of the family of the Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I mean that he could have just appeared. He didn't need a mother. I mean he could have just boom, here I am, right? But yet they say, Larry, in the mystical city that of all creation, the stars, the extraterrestrials, the galaxies, anything created is only a sketch, a rough sketch of what they put into creating her.
Hmm.
It's, I mean, it's a, well, and of course she's a carrier of Christ.
No, she had to be the perfect tabernacle.
So it would make sense, but they didn't get into the Immaculate Conception with Washington. They just got into the perils, and we're backing you on where you're going because the umbrella, and you recognize God. You had a Catholic country that's supposed to recognize God, jettisons them.
Yeah.
So Larry's often said, Our Lady of America, he didn't say, bring me all the Catholic kids.
No. It was always bring me all of my children.
Which is what he and I are attempting to do, mainly Larry, is to fulfill his obligation to bring me the children. Now, he, for 24 years, has been involved in the mission at Sylvan Springs. And now he's involved in this mission of attempting to reach out for our Blessed Mother and our Lord, these precious gifts that have been given to us.
I just want everyone to know that it's more accessible than you may give yourself credit for. And that Our Lady's asked for all of her children to know about her call to purity. Like I said, purity doesn't need to be this shutdown word that says, "Oh God, purity, oh my God."
And I thought like that too. I'm thinking, how are we going to get this purity thing? Because
Well, and I did too, and I thought,
really, I ain't pure. I know I ain't pure.
well, is this all about my
first-class
sex
sinner.
habits and all like that? I was thinking, but
Yeah,
it's
really,
no,
we're
it's
done.
all about what is your, and I learned about what is your purposeful intent. What is your reasoning behind what you do?
You're
Why
doing, which
are you
makes the
doing it?
difference in
Are you
virtue.
doing this for your growth
Right.
or for God's,
Yeah.
growth in there? Are you doing this for, God's plan, or are you doing this for yours? Are you taking the Jeffersonian model for revolution?
As
Are you taking
opposed
the
to-
French model
correct.
for revolution? And the blood that goes on. Right now, in this world right now, we've got a lot of people that want to use the French model that if you don't agree, you don't deserve to live.
Yeah, in fact, I would like to, in the future, do a little 20, 25-minute deal on the guillotines that were brought into the United States. And well, no, I mean, it's a true story.
And these aren't the ones for cutting your cigar ends off, right? Not those. Well, they make a mockery out of that.
Not unless you got 6 cigars in your mouth, and they might work a deal with you. But no, these are not guillotines of the French Revolution. These are monster machines that were brought into the country, which we
Well,
have
we can look
not
at all
to
those
scare
things.
you, but
Well, we need to take a look at these old stories. We're going to look at a lot of other stories that aren't being reported
correct.
around the world. And I'd talked before on my segment there on I believe something is happening.
Oh, absolutely.
And there are connections in these things. And a lot of these things are not discussed or explored because they're very uncomfortable to talk about.
Extremely uncomfortable.
Because it's very
Earth-shattering.
Yeah, it's reality. Is scary.
Yeah. Think of a hydrogen bomb going off in the Vatican in
Well,
a spiritual way.
oh, okay, but I don't want to see anyone get
No, I'm
damaged
just
or
saying that
broken.
it's of that proportion. It's
Well, it's monumental in the change it can make, and probably maybe should make.
right.
We've been talked about these weaknesses and problems. Our Lady has talked about it a number of times. Other visionaries have talked about it.
Correct.
Well before the time I was born.
Right.
Talking about weakness under the collars and all like this, and because this is how they were formed. These formators made them this way. They made them thinking this way, and they lost their touch with humanity so much.
Absolutely.
And then they got their touch with their position and power.
Right.
And I think we were talking about Father Hesburgh,
Yes.
that there had been a push before Father Hesburgh came into power at Notre Dame,
Right.
that it was common for in some areas for priests to go work in the world
That's right.
for a year
That's
and doing hard work,
absolutely.
physical labor.
And he spent a year doing it.
Hesburgh did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Tell me about that. What do
Well,
you know?
he spent a year. They had a farm, and they subjected their priests that were going to be priests to this hard work for a year because they wanted to see if they had the ability to get with the soil and to feel cold and to do things. That the eggs just didn't come from the grocery store; you had to take the eggs from the chickens and feed the chickens and all. But Hesper,
They would have these basic human understandings
There you go,
of
yeah.
where the egg comes from, where the milk comes from.
Thank you.
You know, that hamburger did just come out
yeah,
of the bag.
right, that's right.
Okay.
So Hesper says,
McDonald's was coming on. It's, no, this is all fact. This is
Correct,
all
yeah.
matter of fact stuff. You know, the world was becoming more accessible, easier.
There you go.
You know, consumer driven.
Who needs God?
And so,
Right.
as the consumer driven markets, grew, our touch with how this stuff got there
Right.
was lost.
yeah,
You know, we still have school kids today that think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows.
really?
Oh yeah.
You serious?
Oh yeah. They're out there.
Chocolate
No, they
milk,
really-
everybody knows, comes in a little container
Yeah,
that you
well,
feel
yeah.
guilty when
Yeah.
you order it.
And it costs
When you're in
85 cents
school,
now,
yeah.
so or more.
It's like, white milk is better for you, Larry. I think I'll have chocolate this time.
I
but
want to
Hes-
support the brown cows.
Hesburgh finally says, our time would have been better spent in an intellectual engagement. And I'm thinking, you didn't get it. You're supposed to understand the value and the beauty of the working person. And you don't want any of it. And of course, I don't want to get into,
Well, they were all supposed to go around and visit, as a pastor, visit all of the parishioners' homes in a calendar year was always the goal.
Really?
Right. Father Havel used to talk about that. If they couldn't do it in a year, at least put it on a 3-year plan to get around to visit all the families in their homes so they had understanding, an innate understanding of what these people's lives were actually like.
Makes sense.
Because how can you pastor somebody or help to grow them? You can't do it under one homogenous
That's
formula because your needs are greater than mine.
Right.
You have a special needs child at
Right,
home.
that's right,
Which, takes you folks away from,
Right.
all, I mean, I'm not saying you did.
No. But
but
you call him father. Father, because he knows the family and he becomes a spiritual father.
Right.
Right.
and so a lot of that has been lost
Yeah, you're right.
because this touch has been lost.
Gone, yeah.
Right. And so a lot of these things are no longer part of the common practice. And this is where, the disintegration and lack of interest and the lack of interest both ways has happened. There's lack of interest from the kids to have this relationship with their parish priest.
Yeah, it's all
He's
gone.
just a scary dude in a big robe
Yeah.
on Sundays to
Right.
a lot of these kids.
Yeah.
But he's not approachable, not touchable.
Right.
And this is what Mary wants you to know about her.
She's
Don't sit there and
approachable,
think of me as not being approachable. I'm not
She
this
is,
hard
yeah.
piece of resin or plastic that you refer to me as and understand me by and relate to me with. I am flesh. And she tells me I used to weave flowers.
Wow.
I used to skip and dance.
Wow.
I was a girl too.
She said that.
Yeah. She wants people to know
Yeah.
that I'm not unapproachable.
We don't get it, do we? We really don't get
No,
it.
because I think a lot of times people are so wanting to be tied up in the pressure and the obedience type of stuff that they don't want to get out of it because they don't want to be thought of as being bad. But she wants to say, come to me, be close to me, give me hugs,
Interesting.
give me kisses,
Right.
that
Yeah.
type of stuff. Be with me, come to mama.
Yeah.
I'm here. No matter your age, no matter your affliction, she's there and she cares.
Right.
And she's got a big job, but don't make it so. Don't allow yourself the ability to walk through the door and be close to the fire, so to speak. It's warm there, and she knows it. And she wants you to be a part of it. And this is how I see and how I feel these things because I've had some really bad times, and she's always kind of been there to help sort it out and explain things. With a trial and stuff like that. I was ready to kill myself, and
No, I remember calling you. I said, Larry, how you doing? I said, well, what are you looking forward to? You used to say, I'm looking forward to going back to bed.
well,
Of course, I understand when
Well,
I was
and it's
ill and sick and with my back, I just want to sleep.
sleep through it, but the pain was so bad
You don't want to.
and the work was so much that I just wanted to sleep. And it wasn't depression; it was just being worn out and constantly being attacked. And I was telling one guy, he says, why are you so angry? I said, well, with all these, church ladies would come around and stuff like that. These older
Telling you how
gals,
to make
they
things
want to tell
work.
you how to do.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Oh, you can't do that. You can't. Well, what have you done? Well, nothing.
Right.
Well, then shut up. Until you're ready to start,
Do something.
moving
Right.
some stuff. I don't want to hear from you. Because right now your opinion means nothing. But these are the same people, and I was trying to be kind to them with the directness because they didn't know what they were saying. They were just being kind of elitists in their own.
In their own right, yeah.
Right.
Right. Here's the combination
You can't do that.
Right.
And they say, well, nobody else is here helping. So until somebody does, I don't care because right now I'm trying to get out of this problem I got.
Overwhelming, absolutely.
I
It's,
Like I said before, I'm not a churchy guy. I don't know all the stuff, and I don't care to know all of it because I think a lot of it just takes things into a more disruptive category of thinking. You know what I'm saying? It takes it at a higher level of what the elitists want to do to make the concepts here just so deep. And
Well,
if you
you-
don't get that,
you-
it spins more people into a spiral.
You put your work boots on and went to work. I mean, you were the one that was trying to chip off ice. You had to put, 2x4s or 2x6s to make sure the roof doesn't clear. And that's all.
Oh, yeah, and that was scary as
Oh,
heck.
come
too.
on, you know what I mean? Who's going to do that? And they
Well,
wanna-
it was scary because I had to put the first one in and no one else would walk into the freezer with me
Sure.
because the damn thing's going to collapse.
well, you'll be dead, yeah.
And so I just had to do it like a mine shaft. I put in the first one. They said, "Don't go in any further." I said, "There
There
goes
we
another
go,
one."
yeah, right.
And I just go back in, and it was
That's just one nightmare.
no, it was just,
In the beginning, it was in 2000 when that happened, 2001.
that was 2000 into 2001. It was right there after that Christmas
Yeah,
holiday.
welcome to the mission.
Yeah, welcome to hell is what it was. It was like, this is really we're gonna run you off, and it was like, I wasn't getting any help. I was getting a lot of condemnation, and I hadn't even done anything. And it's like, what the heck did I do? So, and then the attacks that came after, Bishop Darwin, EWTN.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a
Yeah,
national.
that was messed up, and that was, when bishops lie, it takes a lot of people with them, and he didn't.
So, what was the story on that, Larry? That
Well, he didn't have to lie. He could have said something else, but he was asked on EWTN. He was in a panel, and I don't know if it was Raymond Arroyo was questioning him, but he was on. It was in 2008, and he was on EWTN, and his guest on there with him was, I think at that time he was Archbishop Raymond Burke.
Burke, okay.
And Archbishop Burke was his companion on the set there. And the question came to Bishop Darcy, asking about Rome City and what had been, what he knows about Rome City and Our Lady of America and all these events. He goes, "Oh, I know nothing. I've seen nothing about Rome City. I've never heard anything. I don't know anything. There's nothing for me to talk about."
Is that incorrect?
Oh, it was a total bullshit.
So tell me what he did know, or how did
Oh, he knew everything. He'd had over 5-6 years of us giving him document files, letters of testimony of physical healing, spiritual conversions.
Oh, you did all that?
Oh, all that. It was all put together. And one of the guys that helped me document these things and pick out the stuff to put on it was the guy who was sitting right next to him on the panel.
Oh, really?
Archbishop Burke.
Wow. So when he said that, how did Burke respond to him? Well, he could.
You go back and look at it. He had such a big eye. His eyes. He said nothing, but it was like a big what?
So this is why Our Lady didn't care whether Jefferson or Washington was a practicing Catholic.
They just want to know if they got the message or not. And so now Cardinal Burke is doing this major eye roll, like disbelief, like.
Well, this is on national TV,
right, worldwide.
That he worldwide that they're saying that I don't know nothing about what's going on with.
And basically calling me a liar.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Because all he had to say in that moment was,
I know a little bit about what's
I
going
know
on.
a little bit about. We're still looking at it.
There you
and
go,
We'll see
right.
where it goes.
That's
But
amazing.
instead, no, he says, "I've seen nothing." The man had said mass for his.
Yeah.
His,
There you go, folks. That's how this
the
thing
youth
works.
ministry groups. He'd have 500 kids in that chapel, which conveniently holds like 280 at the most. But we packed them in there, and he basically told them all and talked about Our Lady of America and the messages to these kids in his homilies.
He did.
Yeah. And then he goes on national TV 5 years later and says
So
he
let me
doesn't
ask
know
you this:
anything.
what's the motive for denying this? Why would your motive be to deny it then?
I think he wanted to shut me down and any credibility that went with it, because the folks over in Fostoria, Ohio had started their lawsuit, and they were spouting a whole bunch of BS lies. And
He wanted to stay away from that.
well, they were coming after him and saying that I was a crook and a thief and stealing from a nun.
Okay.
When it was actually the opposite way around.
Okay, all right,
She was stealing and lying to me and taking money from me.
Right.
I never took a dime from that guy.
Right.
And I wasn't after that. And then so the gaslighting happened at that time. Everything that they were doing is what they were charging me with, and I hadn't done anything.
And he didn't want to get involved at all.
Well, he wanted to shut it all down because he thought these folks over in Fostoria were nut jobs away, and that some of their people are doing. And Bishop Blair over there in Toledo wasn't doing anything to shut his own craziness down in his own diocese.
So they weren't doing their job. They
were all sitting down and, sitting on their hands and saying, so Bishop Blair ends up getting two other guys out of Indianapolis to come in and sue this woman to free the devotion and the copyrights and trademarks and stuff like that. But in doing so, the bishop, rather than doing it himself, he gets these other guys to come in and do it, which was weakness on his part, because all he had to do was just say no.
Right.
But he didn't have the balls to do that.
Yeah, so it got into the courts.
And so he deflected it to these guys to go and try to do his dirty work for him. They go in with the assault, and they file suit against the Fostoria woman. And what does she do? She fires back with a counter lawsuit and adds me into it. I didn't even know these guys.
Right.
So they fire back a counterclaim lawsuit under the Federal RICO Act with 232 counts coming back against me and these other two guys that I didn't even know. And so all of a sudden I'm involved in this conspiracy in 2008, that never happened.
Unbelievable.
232 counts. They're after Trump for 19. Please.
Oh, really? He's in less than you are, than you were.
It's crazy what they do with this crap.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, sure. And once you get sued, I mean, you're into you got to defend yourself.
Well, wouldn't you think if you did something that started something, that started a chain reaction, and somebody came back on it, somebody else got figured into it, got hurt?
Right.
Wouldn't you say, hey, man, didn't mean for that to happen?
Right. Nobody said anything to you. Every man for himself. Don't let the perpetual door hit you in the ass.
Screw you, Larry.
And by the way, you got a couple church ladies want to tell you how to make this thing happen.
Right.
So, hey, you want to work for the Blessed Mother?
Yeah, that's dirty work.
Very tough.
But it was just, but it all came about because when bishops either lie or don't do their job.
Well, that's easy.
And if anyone wants to talk about this, we got the receipts on this one. And Bishop Blair, I don't know where you're at right now. I think they moved you to the East Coast.
No, they should know the truth.
But I'd like to talk to you about this, too,
Yeah.
and, why you did what you did, because it was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, why did you do what you did? Why didn't we come together as a Catholic family and you
Well,
assert your authority, your legitimate authority on things of the church?
And this is where the men have been left out of the equation in these bishops and priests.
Yeah.
They've taken their manhood away from them. They don't understand. Now they've got this different title and this different set of thinking, but they've stopped being, courteous and dutiful men.
Yeah, so you're nothing.
I mean, a real
You're
man
an empty
man
right.
would pick up the phone or write a letter.
So
and say,
this
hey,
is
man,
not
I'm
going to
sorry.
happen. Yeah, Larry, we're on this. We want to work with you on what's going on here. This is not right. This is not correct. But national TV in front of an archbishop denying, and the archbishop knows that your local bishop is lying. And my God,
Well, it drove me to the point. I mean, the Catholic people in this diocese ended up not going after just me. They went after my family. They went after my parents. They made life.
Did they really?
Oh yeah, they went after them. They would confront my parents and make it so uncomfortable for them to even want to go to their local parish.
Really?
Because these church ladies would come along and say, "Oh, your son is such a bad man. Bishop says he's a liar."
Yeah, you're right, Larry.
He needs to be excommunicated.
I never thought of that. That he's impacting everyday interactions of people that.
This is what happens when bishops don't stand up and do the right thing. Because they're bringing a whole group of people that aren't really tight in their own formation.
Yeah.
And you're giving this bad information. It was a total lie. There was at least 8 different people had given Bishop Darcy a whole pile of documents. He could not say. We had had multiple discussions at the facility there when he was doing his youth ministry deals, talking about these different incidents. And for him to say he knew nothing, never heard anything, it was...
You know, I've known you for 25 years, 24 years, and I've heard bits and pieces of this, but really in terms of just today and the interaction, I know you've talked to me about this. I never realized the enormity of impact that lies, deceptions, and how it affected you and your mother and father.
Well, because he used the world to turn against me to try to shut me down.
Unbelievable.
But at that point, I don't think he knew that the counterclaim lawsuit had come back, and then in that wave they came back, they needed 3 people to charge. And so they had these 2 guys, they needed a third wheel, so they picked me as a convenient one, even though I didn't know him. And then they started, this ex-prosecutor, she starts coming after me, wanting me to sign all these documents. Says, we'll let you off the case, so, you do that, just blame it all on those guys. I said, I don't even know these guys. I said,
Nor did those guys extend a hand of help to either.
Well, no one ever said, hey, man, we're sorry.
They got to help you, right?
We didn't mean for that intention. How can we help you?
Right.
I'd lost everything at this time. And so 4 years of hounding and pounding on me really drove me down. It drove my wife away.
Right.
She didn't want anything to do with this because she was starting to believe these other lies, that I was a thief and was stealing from this nun who wasn't a nun. That was a lie. Patricia Fuller hadn't been a nun since 1977 when she'd been thrown out of her second convent. She was finally thrown out of the Precious Blood for being incorrigible. And this is what we dealt with. But had Bishop Blair at that time just stood up and said, "This
he'd
is
have shut it
BS."
all down,
right?
Because he could have said that she has no status as a nun,
right?
And
he did say that, but she said, "Screw you! I don't follow man's rules. I'm under God." And so there was problems there. I wasn't the problem. I was giving stuff away.
Well, they dragged you into it. I mean,
they drugged me into it because they thought I was wealthy and had all this
deep
property.
pockets.
But in the meantime, I ended up losing the property when the banks collapsed. I ended up, losing the property and all leverage at that point. No business was to be had. Nobody had any money, and I couldn't sue 350 American families for fulfillment of their contract that they signed with me.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't going to be happening. And I was hoping that my lender would work with me, but he turned bad then too. Goofy shit happened with him then too. But this is probably the most I've ever talked about it.
Is that?
Yeah, it's always just been kind of something I just had to eat that sandwich. And
well, the good news is that there is stability, at least a bureaucratic stability at the Springs. They are presenting the books, The Mystical City, which is my interest very early on with Larry, and
well, you showed it to me and proved to me the veracity in it. And I looked at it, and I was then also told not to read it.
No, that's fine, and I waited.
Well, but for the reasons, so it wasn't
Correct.
I wouldn't get confused.
Confused as to what's going on, but nonetheless, I think that you've completed your mission here at the Springs. But
I think
well, that's what you're doing here, right?
Right. So this is not necessarily. This has Catholic influence, and I want to try to explain to our Protestant brothers and sisters, even non-believers, that although Catholicism has its rules and all like that, it also has its problems.
Right.
And
which are mainly human.
Exactly.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with our Lord. It has to do with us.
Right.
And them.
Right. And control and, controlling the narrative, if nothing else. And then they give themselves permissions to go up and either bend the truth or absolutely break it, with no one to contest him.
No, there isn't.
I mean, even his buddy sitting right next to him didn't say anything. Hey, man, that's BS. I know. I've talked with Larry several times.
He could have opened his mouth.
Yeah, but he didn't. Well, he was being polite and correct in the way he was trained.
Right.
What he would say today, I don't know.
No, he's getting a taste of the rejection. He's getting a taste.
Well, he's had it for a long time.
Yeah.
Not necessarily from abroad, but even from his own community, that people didn't like his tone, thinking he was being a little tough.
He's a pretty soft guy. Well, I've listened.
Well, he's very well natured, but the words, sometimes, I mean, the words matter, and the words are what it is. It doesn't matter how you say it, it matters what you say. Sometimes you can add to it by the way you say it. But it's like our protesters today saying they're calling for, death to Israel, and they go, oh, we don't mean that. Yeah, you do. That's what the words mean. You want to have, that you're saying that Zionists don't have any right to live, that all Zionists need to be executed. This is what's going on this week.
Yeah, well, this is the destruction of
Well, it's creation
Israel
of chaos.
and the destruction
It's a
of the
creation
United
chaos,
States
yeah.
and the destruction of Christianity has always been the main target of the fallen angel. So, but this is, from my perspective, in the 73 years that I've lived, this is probably the worst upside down experience in human affairs.
My mother's 98, and she says it's just abominable what's going on, how people can think these things. She watches the news. She says, is this a joke?
Yeah, I said the same thing.
She asked me,
This stuff isn't going on.
She asked me, is this a comedy show?
Yeah. No, she's right.
I said, yeah, it is. It's CNN.
Yeah.
Active comedy.
Well, you were saying that they're clowns, but without the shoes. Or something.
Yeah, well, I'd say there's a lot of people running. We got a big clown show going on. All they're missing is the shoes. But squeaky noses and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But actions have consequences. My actions have had consequences with me, but I didn't ever deserve to be put in a place where I felt so isolated, so alone, and so determinedly rejected that I would be into a point to want to take my own life.
Well,
that's totally against my normal nature.
But I'll tell you something. Ferdinand Mercanti wanted to take his life. Many of the mystics that have been put into a position, which is, and once you get put into that position, you become you used to call it a target,
we're a high-value target.
Well, you were a high-value target. They wanted to, same thing with the birds knocking on your
Well,
window.
they tried to kill me during the trial. I got hit with a hit and run. A guy
There you go.
was out there in the middle of the snowstorm, obviously saw me in the crosswalk and gunned it.
No shit.
And he came at me, and I was just agile enough. I was able to jump up.
Yeah.
But it got my whole lower body.
Oh, really?
And I flipped up and over the top of the car, and the car took off. It was in the middle of a snowstorm. That guy saw me there. I locked eyes with them.
He wanted to kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they wanted me out of the case because I was starting to turn
Yeah.
the disposition of the jury.
Right.
And the other side knew that they were in trouble, and I was the difference maker. If they could get it on just facts of the case and these legal things like that, they had a chance. But they could not deal with the arguments that I brought forward in support of the people.
Yeah.
Because I was always worried about the faithful. I'm the only one who talked in the trial about the needs of the faithful.
Right.
And you.
Well,
and Alex was my key. He was one of my key witnesses. I had you and Jan. And Alex came in and did an awesome job, won all their hearts over, just talking about the needs of the faithful, and his work is running around the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah, and a lot of it,
this.
I'm kind of an offbeat sort of a person that explains things that's amusing, but I try to tell the truth. And Larry subpoenaed, and myself and what do you call it? Jan came, and we loved what was going on in Our Lady of America in our ways that are limited, but with honesty. And it was the same thing. Larry did the same thing. And but the public can relate to your everyday person.
Yeah, our jury, we had a Hindu.
Did we?
Yeah, a couple of agnostics that said they didn't.
Did we really?
They didn't know, and had two Catholic women, not really highly practicing, but they were born and raised Catholic. We had one person said she was an atheist. She didn't believe anything.
So they were amused.
Well, they were,
and the truth might have.
The stipulations of all the minutia, the legal stuff, and all like that. They could care less. This trial went on for 3 months.
Wow.
And so this jury was just wore out by these people going back. They fought for 3 days over 3 invoices about purchasing envelopes.
Oh my God.
I mean, it was like $300 worth of envelopes that were purchased to put books into. And they went on for 3 days bitching and moaning at each other back and forth about that. I got up there in about 4 minutes I asked one of the other persons there, he had a fulfillment center. I said, why on God's green earth would you go out and buy all these damn envelopes when you're buying them by the truckload? All you got to do is just go out to your warehouse, grab a handful of envelopes, go back in and stuff your envelopes and send them out.
Right.
He goes, well, because that would be stealing. I didn't own all the company.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, okay. So that was the argument. So, okay, there'd have been stealing for him to do that. Okay, I'm good with that. I let it go and walked away, But what that ended up doing was it defeated 3 days of BS back and forth trial time and wearing this jury out.
Yeah, they don't like
And then I got up there in about 3 or 4 minutes and brought it all to a happy conclusion that it wasn't
necessary.
Yeah, it wasn't theft. It was they just wasted 3 days of your life, and I apologized to him for it. And I brought it around to a sincere closing, and that's what I did throughout the trial. Is I made all this crazy crap that was going on.
You reduced it.
Reduced it down to a final element. Yeah. And when you came in for that afternoon, the jury said afterward that was their favorite part of the whole trial.
It was. I have to get the transcripts because I ramble on. I'm not sure what I said, but I know I wanted them to know the import of what was going on there was unbelievably important. And
well, it was really good and it worked out. So all I did was I just kind of wound Alex up, with the topic.
Yeah, like a
I just said, okay,
toy. Just let me go.
Yeah, all he was missing was the peanuts to throw around the crowd.
Right.
I mean, he was like one of these wind-up monkeys. And I just let him go, and he just started talking about his stuff, and I tried to frame it back around a little bit when I saw the jury kind of losing interest on it a little bit, or they were losing the train.
Well, the train of thought is where it was going.
Or the judge.
Right.
And then it was after about almost, 2 hours or so, you're up there.
Was they that long?
Oh, you're on there for like 3 or 4 hours.
You're kidding me.
No.
It was like a dream.
Well, it went quickly because it was an active participation. Well, anyway, the other counsel stands up and objects and says, I object as after all this, because I don't know what you're getting close to talking about the money. There's no money in it. These are money pits. And she stood up. She says, I object. This man hasn't been proven to be an expert in anything. And to which Alex has got put your glasses on.
Like this.
So he had his glasses way down here. He's got his notes. He looks back up at the judge. And he's waiting for the judge to give him the outcome. And the judge says, well, he sure sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He says, proceed. And Alex is looking at him and goes, thank you. And the jury just loved that moment. It was right out of a Disney casting movie to have this professorial type of looking guy looking up there and taking direction from the judge. And the judge said, well, he sure sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Proceed. Overruled the objection. And Alex goes, thank you. It was just hilarious.
It was easy to do when you have Our Lady coming in 1956 announcing that the miracles, mainly of the soul, will be greater than Fatima and Lourdes. I mean, it's the mother load, and you're thinking, this is unbelievable. And I still am mesmerized by the whole process, but I just gave it my best.
The jury loved it because you talked about things that they could understand, the human element. And this is what I brought to the trial. And had they just let me go first rather than last, we probably could have saved a lot of time. But they would have buried the lead, as they say, all the stuff that I had fought for. It was good that I went last.
You said that you watched their faces in terms of as Jan and I were talking.
Oh, yeah.
You could see a transformation.
Oh, yeah.
Was that because we touched them in a human way?
Yes, because then they understood the love and the passion that you both were bringing to it.
Okay.
They understood that, and they understood how if anyone was hurt in this thing, it was people like you and me in particular, because all this stuff that they did to enter this false discussion about me, hired these out-of-work actors to come in and portray themselves as concerned, good Catholics, that I was stealing from a nun, none of which ever happened.
They did hire people?
Oh, yeah, they had hired out-of-work actors. And they'd come in, and it's always...
This gets worse the more you
talk. I got access to her check register, so I'd go home at night and at the hotel, and I would look through the check register to see where the money went. And there was one time, and I'll go into that, it was about a dog food called Bill Jack. And I got a nice display for that, so I got a whole thing on Bill Jack that we're going to talk about. But this woman was a liar and a big liar. and and she showed up for there, and she told this whale of a story, I mean, about this dog food, and I just broke it all down and basically showed that she was lying right to the jury right then at that time. The jury just loved it because I didn't call her a liar. I didn't have to. She proved that she was a liar.
Unbelievable.
And they didn't believe any of it. And that, I think the Bill Jack moment kind of solidified everything against their case. And that was midway through. And their tendency then was to lean to, they didn't care what the other folks had to say. They want to know what Larry had to say. Because these guys are all fighting about money.
Yeah,
Larry's fighting about what the needs of the people.
Right. And the substance of the site.
What are you fighting for? You fighting about money? We don't care about money. You fighting about that? We don't care about that.
Well, you didn't even ask for any kind of a...
You fighting about Alex or you fighting about Jan? Oh, we care about that.
Right.
And that's what the jury loved, is that I brought the human element to it, and that was the understanding. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I don't care about all the legalese with arguments about what this means and what she wrote or that means what she wrote. I care about how it feels and how it's supposed to go forward
the
in our
import
lives.
of it, yeah.
And this is where it matters. Not, and I don't care if you're Catholic, and I don't care, if you're, go to whatever Protestant church or whatever it is, I really don't care. I just want you to be a good person.
You said Justice Amy Comey Barrett read these documents?
She had to. She was the alternate on the appellate court.
And that was in Chicago?
Right. And so she had her people find out who the hell is this Larry Young guy.
Really?
Yeah. They want to know, is this guy...
Well, she's Catholic, so did she have any idea of the devotion or that?
I think she learned about it in that case.
Then she learned
right.
about it, okay.
And her husband's uncle is Father Kevin Barrett at Catholic Holy Family Land.
Okay. Oh.
And so, yeah, there's definitely a built-in...
Yeah, he said Mass, I think, when they did the dedication of the altar up in the Springs.
No, the bishop did that.
Yeah,
the bishop would do the dedication.
But wasn't
of the
there a
altar.
priest after?
Well, Father Barrett's been here a couple
He's
times.
been there, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He's come over to do the masses on the first Saturdays, I think a couple times now. Always has good things to say, and we appreciate that. I think he did a secondary lecture one time. So these are all good things. But the main thing is, for these devotions and stuff like that, I mean, you try to talk to most anybody my age or younger about Fatima.
They don't
what is
know.
Fatima? They have no idea. What are these secrets? Why? If there's secret messages, why aren't they letting it go? Why are you keeping something a secret if it's coming from heaven?
Well, we're gonna review Fatima, Lourdes.
Well, these are questions that, like, people in the jury would say, well, if you're not going to talk about it, it must be bullshit.
No, it's Our Lady of America talks about greater than Fatima and Lourdes. So we will be presenting. I've been doing research on those areas. We'll be presenting those in the context of what was being asked for and what the messages are. We're going to be doing a lot of very interesting inquiries into the dogma of hell. We're going to be taking a look at Vincent Maselli's The Antichrist and the teachings of the doctors, the Roman and Greek doctors, Cardinal Newman. So we'll look at a number of different things in the context of Our Lady's quest for her children and their souls to be saved.
Now, these old things that you're talking about, these older paths or whatever that had happened, do you see them pointing in towards a culmination here with Our Lady of America, or do you think there's something that goes even beyond Our Lady of America?
No, I think the apex is Our Lady of America, and these are underpinnings, and they're great underpinnings because they're phenomenal. Mm-hmm. But Our Lady's announcing that the intervention of her son and what will come out of the apparitions, greater than Fatima and Lourdes. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, hopefully we'll begin to unveil some of that mystery. I think that they're pillars of America and Our Lady of America.
So, but essentially, though, if we don't find a way to have manifest Our Lady's request for a life of purity, and keep in mind, it's not just about your sex life; it's about your intention, how you go through your day. Or
there'll be a warning, and if we don't change.
You don't think we've gotten a warning? How much warning do you want?
Well, they're talking about it. They're talking about where God interfaces with every human being throughout the world,
Oh, with the mirroring of the souls.
and we
type of
see
thing.
our souls as our Lord sees it. That warning says now you can rededicate yourself to darkness or to the light, and if we don't, then our Lord still promises peace, but then there's a chastisement.
Well, this is why I say you got to know who you are.
Yeah.
Then make your declaration as to who you are.
Our Lady of America talks about that.
Does she?
Oh yeah, she talks about we can do it two
See, I've
ways.
never read the messages.
I know you haven't, but I've read them, and she says specifically we can do it the easy way, which is. So I said, "Blessed Mother, let's do it the easy way."
Like the old,
or we. Yeah, oh yeah, she said they want souls. They're going to get them one way or the other.
right.
But if the chastisement comes, then we're going to learn our lesson. Just like the bird you're talking about, the eagle.
Yeah, kick him out of the nest.
Well, she'll fly down and she'll, bring us back up again. But she's
Mm-hmm.
saying, I can't hold it back any longer.
You got to learn to fly sometime.
Yeah.
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 And yeah, but I thought that was a great parallel to go with the eagle insight there for what Our Lady is asking for is we want you to stand up for purity, and use your wings, use the talents that you have to soar. You're not meant to be a sideline. This isn't a spectator sport,
Right.
and everyone I think needs to get in the game. And if you can't carry the ball, carry the water.
That's all. Something
type
right.
of thing. Be
That's
a part of it, and I think we can get through there. But I think when Our Lady was calling for miracles greater than Fatima or Lourdes, then I don't know. But all
of the
those work.
soul, the conversion
Well,
of the
I think she's looking here is that the miracle is going to be if we can convert the thinking in our people, and we can maintain what will end up being our remnant church. And the remnant church isn't going to be just out of one; it's going to be a category, a whole group
it
of
has to
people.
be real. Yeah.
It's going to be a merging together of
Yeah.
things of the people who are all like-minded, because there's a lot more people, like Our Lady says, you're more like me than you're not like me.
Right. That's right.
We're
Right.
more alike than not alike.
Right.
And it's the same thing, I think, with our Protestant friends and our Catholic friends. There's more in common. I was having an opportunity to meet with an Amish bishop last Monday.
Oh, you were
We were
saying
cutting
yeah.
down. We were cutting down trees on the property.
Yeah,
out
what was
here
that
and
like?
thinned the woods out. Well, it was very, very interesting. The guy I found out was the bishop of his local parish. He's just another working guy, and I found out he's a bishop. I said, "Wow, what kind of troubles do you have in your community?" He says, "The same ones you do."
Did he say that?
He says, "We have the same troubles," and he looked at me. He says, "What do you think is missing in our people these days?"
How did he respond to that?
I said, "Joy. Joy is missing. They don't feel joy. And so they don't feel any reason why they should care." And he goes, "Yes, they don't have joy." He agreed that was a problem.
And where does joy come from?
Joy comes from having suffered.
Okay.
And suffering, the relief of suffering.
Okay.
Gives you appreciation. So if you've suffered, those times
You're
you're back.
right. No, you're right.
When the appreciation, when the pain is lifted.
No, you're
And then
right.
when it
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
happen, then
Thank
you're
you,
like,
Lord. I'm not in
so
a wheelchair.
joyful.
yeah.
I'm not.
You
sitting
betcha.
there.
Right.
I can walk the steps without the handrail now. I'm good. I'm back. That's
Absolutely.
joy. You're taking
Thank
two
you,
steps
God.
at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
You're back. You're invigorated. You're
You're
doing
not in a
things.
wheelchair. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's-
you express joy in the way you move and the way you think and the way you even eat dinner. But that was really good. Oh,
Right,
man, that,
right.
we haven't had that was really good. We got to do
Yeah,
that more
so
often.
we have a certain sense of
Just little
humility,
things like that.
thankfulness, gratitude,
Mhm.
and the joy that comes from, like you
But-
said, suffering.
Well, and like with suffering, when you get used to it enough, or you understand it and don't attack it when it happens to you, but you end up developing an art of suffering, because you end up giving that up, and you realize that once the suffering's done, there'll be an appreciation and joy will come out of
At
it.
the end of it,
And
yeah.
that's what you look forward to.
So when did you come to the sense of all of the suffering that you endured, emotional, the physical, the economic, the spiritual, the rejection? When did you come to the point of where you said, something,
You need
this has done me some good?
You need 3 hands of topics right there. I think you went through 10 really quick. Well, When did I realize that?
Yeah, that you said, all right, okay, what am I going to do with this?
Well, when it didn't stop, and I just realized there was just no way out of it except through it.
Okay, all right.
And you can't run from these things. And it was like with the trial. I had no reason. I hadn't done anything. I was a victim.
Yeah.
And the jury recognized that at the end. And that's why they spent an extra day of deliberation. They were angry with me that I didn't ask for damages.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get the hell out of it and go home.
Go
and not
home,
have,
and lay your head down on
and try to have an opportunity, try to reconcile with my wife, but that didn't happen. She was too far gone. They'd attacked her so much too.
Were you still married at the time? Were you in the trial?
Still legally married, yeah, and I was still.
But
trying.
you knew she was saying, I don't know.
Well, she'd been diseased so much by the lies that they had told. I mean, when Bishop Darcy said he didn't know anything, she heard it too.
Of course, she experienced him being part of it, right?
Yeah, but then when he said no, he didn't know anything, she's like, what the hell? She says, I thought you'd been giving him all this stuff. I said, I had. She says, well, he wouldn't lie. I said, he wouldn't.
Oh, really? She went for the bishop's
yeah.
lie?
She says, well, Bishop wouldn't lie. I said, oh, really?
Oh, my God. Yeah.
And so my wife then was turned against me. So, and they had gone after her as well.
Wow.
Trying to tell her that I was a criminal and a thief, stealing from this nun.
You're a better man than I, Ganga.
Well, I was...
Because I could never go through that.
Well, I was ready to end a lot of things at that point.
Yeah.
But most of it was like I felt there was no way I was going to get out of it. I had 4 lawsuits against me.
You got it, yeah. I remember when you...
Most of it was bullshit.
I remember when you came out of like a phoenix coming out of the ashes, and you were ready to go to battle, but you were still being bludgeoned by...
Oh, yeah. Well, high-value target. Hell, they tried to kill me during the trial. Coming up, there was no one to write a police report to. It was the middle of a snowstorm.
Right.
And all like this. I mean, what are you going to do? They're going to say, well, you dead? No. You hurt? Yeah. But I'm going to make it through because I came down my shoulder on the other side of the car.
What did the car look like? Well, it had a lot of snow on it. Well, Larry, we're going to be doing some good things, hopefully, in the future on this presentation. So
I hope so.
I've got a lot of stuff that I'd like to bring forward, and this is the forum that the good Lord has directed my efforts, and we'll just see where we go from here. It's all.
Well, I appreciate you, Alex, and I appreciate
love
you
you,
doing
Larry.
all this diligence, and that. So there's a lot of things that we're going to be going into, and Alex is the guy that has the ability. He's been reading through these things for years, and he's got, I think, the temperament to help go through it. But we're going to try to digest some of these things, and some of these things might be uncomfortable topics for a lot of people. But this is how I think the Holy Spirit has built the church over all this time through, debate, disputes and whatever. But no one's here looking for a battle. We're just trying to say, what is this?
Yeah, we're doing what Archbishop Bishop
Fulton Sheen.
Fulton Sheen has said. I mean, and so some of the stuff that you presented upstairs, and what Sheen was seeing is like actually,
Well, I wanted to bring his old words back up in a contemporary,
beautiful
mode because the man was definitely a visionary.
I didn't realize that.
Well, the stuff he was putting out in '47, and what apparently Our Lady was concerned about in when her visits in the '50s was the complacency and the lack of fortitude from her priests and bishops.
Wow!
Because she knew that by them not standing up and saying no in the right times, that there was going to be problems to be had.
I have one more question for you before we wrap this up, and I asked you upstairs. I said, Larry, why does Our Lady insist on the authority being under the bishop when some of our bishops would prefer not to have these kinds of things put before them?
Well, they don't want to deal with the dirt,
But Our Lady insists that it must be under that.
Well, she wants organization, and the obedience.
So we don't have to worry about how she's going to work with these people. I mean, we need.
Well, we do. We have to be the ones that get our noses in their faces
instead of,
and not the other end of the stick. As we say, we got to put our noses in their faces and not in the other place.
Okay.
We have to.
So she wants order, but
she wants order, and she wants discipline. She wants them to stand there, and she wants us. And Fulton Sheen had talked about it a lot. That it's our job
to do that. Okay, all right.
To push these to to ask these questions because they want to ask these questions of themselves.
Okay.
Because it's uncomfortable
Okay.
for them, and it goes against the grain on things. And, I'd asked a question in an earlier segment about the Cardinal Gerhard Muller over in Germany calling for the excommunication of President Biden. And I said, why is he doing it? Why aren't the U.S.
Bishops
cardinals
doing
and
it.
bishops doing
Yeah.
it? They should
And then you also said, well, why didn't Mueller do it when he was
the head
the big
of
mucky muck?
right.
And you said your thoughts were,
No, they don't want to have these disruptive conversations. He was head. He could have brought it in from the Vatican perspective and said, look, all you foreign leaders and all like that out here promoting abortion, who are claiming to be Catholic.
sure,
No.
right, you're out.
Yeah,
Right.
we're excommunicating you.
There
We're
you
going
go.
to until you educate
Let us know when you
yourself.
change it,
Right.
right.
If you need help with that, we'll talk. And this has not happened.
Okay.
And so why he sits there and says this and tries to give the U.S. bishops and cardinals a black eye, to usurp their authority, so to speak, or their obligation. Maybe he was just trying to say, hey, guys, you got to step up and do your job.
Okay.
Or he was trying to deflect from the problems that they have in the German church right now where people are
I
complaining.
understand there's a lot, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people are concerned with their church tax and things like this, but this is how they do it. It's not their tithing method, and that we have here. We don't have these bishops' appeals and stuff like that that was supposed to last for 1 year and has been a lifelong new adding on, and a lot of
It's the
people are
same
complaining
thing in
about
the
that.
public
Well,
sector.
Darcy said it's a one-time thing. We're only going to
Yeah.
do it one time. My dad says, "Oh, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
You're going to do it every year. Once they get it in place, and they're
You're
back
done,
every year
right.
for that bishop's appeal."
Frank the Tank knew he was an accountant.
Well, he was doing the books for several different parishes for free, just to be a good advocate for them. So he would do their book work and stuff like that and take care of their filings and all like that. He did it for free, but that was also as a concession and a favor to Father Havel, who was one of his best friends, to trying to help him help these other pastors who were in over their heads.
Right.
So Frank would be able to come in and take that all for him. My dad was not always glad to do it, but he was,
he was committed to right.
and he was good at it, and it was the way that he tried to help. My dad was a good guy. He was a converted Baptist, and he was just trying to do everything he could to live up to the promises he made when he converted from being a Baptist to being a Catholic.
That's right. He was a Protestant, wasn't he?
Right. They were going to make him like one of the managers or whatever, the main guys at the Baptist church there in Decatur. And when he told them no, that he was going to become Catholic, they started having this prayer vigil for him. They were thinking,
Yeah, really. They
"Oh
can't
my
go
gosh,
out.
we have to deliver.
We got
him.
one. Wonk, wonk, wonk. He's
Well,
converted.
we have to deliver him from evil.
Yeah,
He's gonna go to
demons
Catholic."
come out. It's
Yeah, he's-
Ernest Ainsley.
Yeah,
It's
he's going to have a split fork tongue and all like that. I mean, they went super.
so,
They're trying to keep him from converting to Catholicism to marry my mom, but my mom was just too darn attractive to him, so he couldn't say no. So my mom and my dad went to Father Havel. Says, "How fast can you make a man a Catholic?"
did he say that?
They went to Father. He said, "Well, it could take a year." He says,
Yeah.
He says, "Can we do it any faster?" He says, "Well," so let's see. It took 6 months.
Good for Father Havel.
Well, there was a lot of fishing trips and stuff like that were ecumenical, or there were growth times that Father Havel would take my dad away, and they would talk in the boat. They had. I would love to have conversations with, or know what those conversations were.
Well,
about.
I think your mother is starting to talk a little bit about.
Well, she didn't know what it was either. What happened? What they talked about in these boat trips and stuff
okay.
like that. 2 men in a boat, talking about fish and God.
Fishing.
And how do I become a Catholic man and participate in this church? So, because there were some misconceptions that he'd grown up with as a Baptist.
That had to be
And
clarified. with
right.
him.
And so there was a lot of discussion going on with those things. But it was good. It had a good outcome, and both good guys. The older I get, the more I appreciate it.
Next week, from my end, and I talked to you about an interest in pursuing a nun that provided the last will and testament that was from Colombia.
Right.
And I plan on reading and extracting and presenting some of that material if that's okay with you.
Let's dig through it. Let's talk
Okay.
about it. There's obviously, I think, something there, and I think there's something there with these folks down in San Antonio. You know, they have nothing to gain.
I
You
remember
know-
seeing them on the internet, and he was a very good-hearted priest.
You're
and you
talking
could-
about Father John Mary.
Yeah, and he was trying to reconcile, saying the things that he needs to say and not upsetting the hierarchy. So I think if
Well,
you
like
got
I
some
said,
insights
the
on
hierarchy should, man up and let's discuss this and not say no. I
Sure.
mean, look at it,
that. It should be on the table.
and determine if there's evil in it or if it's all good. I mean, I haven't seen anything evil about it, but they don't like the content of the message. Well, I didn't like some of the contents of my messages either. But,
Absolutely,
they all came to be.
Right.
And so I appreciate all this hard work that you do, because you're the scholarly type to dig through this. And we're not going to try to say anything's truthful or factual. We're just saying that it's out there,
And you
these
take a
things
look
need
at
to be
it.
looked
Sure.
at.
That's right.
And we need to discern on this stuff as a group, not one or two. This is not, these messages or these intentions are not for one or two people. It's for everybody.
That's right.
And it's like with my call here is not just about getting to the Catholic people. It's about getting to all the children,
That's right.
because she sees us all as her children, whether or not they regard her as a conduit to her son as we do. But hopefully they will understand that by her own nature and her accessibility, that this is a very easy way for people to come to a higher understanding of these things. And she understands that. She understands we're human. And she's been a human for 2,000 plus years. We're just getting into it.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Right. No.
And if she doesn't know us, I don't know what she knows, because we've been her favorite topic for 2,000 years.
Right.
So, good stuff in there. I think we got some really good stuff coming. The building blocks are down there for what it is about knowing who you are and what that all means, not just for your faith base, but everything that goes with your life, all these things. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up, and we'll be back. So thanks to Alex. We'll be back. So everybody, I love you, and I'll be back.
Thank you, my friend.